to just basically welcome you, as I'm trying to do right now, and to give a couple of introductory comments that will lead to some sharing from the Lieutenant Governor and Don Miner at JobsOhio and Steve Buehrer from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. These are very important areas, and I want to touch on them for just a minute or two. First, I want to answer a question, and this sort of relates to what I'm trying to tell you that we're trying to do in Columbus. A question that came to me, and a concern from Joel Montgomery, who's reading a good brochure right now. He raised down on the ground is where we learn a lot of things. We're trying to do a program to help strengthen our state. Many programs. One of those specific programs is scholarships to help those in local government. This is a governmental thing. Inside government, we need to get more efficient there too, not just out in our private sector. So this, we were able to put a little bit of money in the budget that we just passed to give some scholarships for Lean, Six Sigma, and programs like that that are being offered around our state. So I get this message from Mr. Montgomery, which is very important because it pointed out some weaknesses about the program as it's coming up out of the ground. And I can tell you that today I checked on another call that I had, found out that the IRS has backed off. And those scholarships, which we thought were going to be taxable income to folks who are taking them, are now not going to be. The IRS said, no, that's really actually a training program. You aren't going to have to have that thing go on your income taxes, taxable income. The second part of his concern was that it's kind of inefficient to have every single employee have to fill out their own paperwork to do this thing. And that, I'm finding, is also under re-engineering, so that hopefully it'll be an online kind of thing that once you select where it is you want to get your training, that institution will get a direct electronic transaction that won't have to fill out any paperwork from that perspective as far as the scholarship. That's not worked out yet, but we're working on it. So those kind of inputs are very important so that we have a business-friendly operation in state government. And that's a full-time job. We have to work through the bureaucracies, and these things can be frustrating, as John Bowling can testify and others around here to we've had interactions over the last year. So we have to keep at that. It's a full-time job.
So anyway, so it's good to see all of you here. I'm interested in what you have to say. At our CSI, our Common Sense Initiative, we have been working with all of our state agencies, with you as small business owners all over the state of Ohio, trying to understand how we can make government easier for you to interact with, getting rid of the bureaucracy, the red tape, and yes, it does exist, and sometimes we're as frustrated about it as you are. But we have a little bit of an advantage. If you get to us, we can help you cut through that and work through it a little quicker. Our goal would be that you don't need us as intermediaries, and that instead, the government's operating and functioning the way that we expect it to operate and function. You are our customers, you're our clients as businesses employing Ohioans. And so my goal through CSI is to be responsive to our businesses. We worked with the Cleveland Clinic on a couple of very important issues, I think very important issues through our CSI office, but one of which was the need to hire more nurses, and recognizing that we have veterans returning from service back to our state, back to other states, who are uniquely qualified and able to step in and do some of these jobs, especially in the nursing area. And so we worked with the clinic and trying to make it easier for them to get their license to practice here in Ohio so that we can get those veterans right back to work. So we had a couple other major initiatives. I say major, I thought they were really important. Keeping some of our top world researchers in Ohio doing extraordinary medical research that has unbelievable outcomes. Sometimes it's simple ideas that end up with simple solutions. When I say simple, not that I could invent it or I could come up with the idea. These guys are professional medical doctors who have, they're the best in the world, but they come up with very common sense approaches to medicine, and we were happy to work with them on some issues to keep those doctors in our state so that they could bring grant dollars to places like the Cleveland Clinic and other research institutions across the state of Ohio, and bring some of the best technology and innovations in medical care to Ohio, and hopefully now we can keep those guys here, which is really important to me. So I appreciate the opportunity to work with those of you I've worked with at our Common Sense Initiative. We are very simple. We want regulations to be simple. We want them to be fair. We want them to be easy to follow, and we want them to cost us the least amount of money possible when it comes to your compliance. And so we'll have continued conversations about that, and I appreciate any input that you have.
Let me give you just a little background on me, because I think it helps tell the story of why I'm in this position and maybe some of the things that we've tried to make a priority in Bureau workers' compensation. As Mary and Ron talked about, I had the privilege to serve for 12 years from Northwest Ohio. I was up in Fulton County, a county not so different than the one we're in here today.
But very distant.
Distant, yes.
I was going to say, no, I thought you were going to say not distant from here. It's very distant.
Distant. Drive Michigan and turn left. That's my house in Columbus. And I knew where Green was, though.
Yeah, you did.
I've stood in your living room. You watched you use the Swiffer. It was great. But, she's a mom, as she pointed out, right? You gotta have these time-saving things,
That's
right?
exactly
I taught
right.
my wife Swiffer after. But anyway, but in addition to serving in the legislature, I will confess I'm an attorney, so I was practicing in a small legal business there. My wife and I were small business owners. And we were feeling some of the crunch that many of you feel in running your businesses. How do you interact with government, this paperwork? How do I deal with it? We even had a workers' comp claim in our little flower shop. A lady dropped a vase and she shouldn't have tried to catch it. That's not a good idea. But we had some of those same frustrations. And although I was perfectly content to keep doing what I was doing and serving in the Senate and trying to work with the new governor-elect and lieutenant governor-elect, I got a call soon after the election from this fellow named Kasich, and we sat down and talked about what he wanted to do with Ohio, and what he and the lieutenant governor were trying to do, and these gentlemen now are part of it as well, is to make the state better economically, to improve the climate to do business in our state, and see how we can get government out of the way and make it more of a partner with business going forward. And ultimately, it was that call to come and be part of the economic recovery of the state so that my children and someday grandchildren perhaps can be part of it. And that's why we were willing, at least in my household, to make the move from a county that I had lived in for 6 generations, or at least my family had, and move to Central Ohio and be part of this bigger priority that the Lieutenant Governor talked about. And I want to tell you, it's been a great move. My wife and I have 3 sons, 15, 12, and 11 now. It's been a great move. One little drawback that I will share with you, when the governor came up to Fulton County to announce that I was going to be appointed, my kids were certain that he had said I was going to be the CEO of BW3. And they don't understand why the honey barbecue wings have not come home, why we don't get a free pass when we go to eat there. Other than that one little glitch, it's been a great move.
No, look, I'm glad to be here as well. And we went through, I guess, everyone introducing themselves. Heard a lot of familiar names, certainly people that we've worked with, certain local economic development partners of ours, but also companies. A number of the companies that are here today we've had projects with, and we are developing good relationships with. But I'll tell you, when you think about what my colleagues have said thus far, including Representative Amstutz, one thing that really came through, and that was the concept of partnership. And that's something that I think really pervades across the governor, the lieutenant governor, this entire administration. And I'll give you an example because it really shows or gives a sense as to how JobsOhio is doing things differently. We actually were working on a project back in the last summer or fall, one in Wayne County. We were trying to attract a company here that did not have a presence in Ohio at the time. And we had a number of meetings with the CEO, the CFO, their executive team, and then we had a follow-up conference call with them. And on that conference call, we had, in addition to myself and a couple people from my team, we had a representative from DSA, we had the director of EPA, the director of Agriculture, the director of the Department of Natural Resources, the tax commissioner, and I think one of his colleagues, and I know there's one other director of a state agency involved. But we went through, and it was probably about an hour-long conference call, and to echo a little bit about what the Lieutenant Governor said about solving people's problems and addressing their issues, we went through and addressed a number of issues for this company. And the CEO, at the end of the call, he said, you know, this is amazing. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you guys actually talk to one another. And, you know, it didn't really sink in until later, but that's the difference, I think, with this administration and something that has allowed us the success that we've achieved.
On behalf of Director Goodman, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I do have to start on a personal note. I'm an alum of the college, so it's really exciting for me to be in Wooster today. But more exciting, I'm glad to see that Coach Moore garnered the #1 seed in the NCAA tournament, so yet again, so go Scots. I'm just going to do a couple things today. Give you a quick overview of Development Services Agency. We've been through a lot of changes. And then secondly, tell you about a handful of programs that are geared towards small businesses in Ohio. DSA is evolving with the advent of JobsOhio. Our role has changed, and that's a good thing for Ohio, and it's a good thing for Development Services Agency. We've narrowed our focus, and by doing that, I think we're just getting better at some core competencies. But under the umbrella of economic development, we are charged with providing oversight of all the state incentives, administrating state and federal programs that are related to economic development, and then we hold those recipients accountable to taxpayer resources. It's really that simple. We do that through 4 main divisions. The first division is our Business Services Group. That's what is probably most well known about DSA. That's where we interact with JobsOhio in terms of providing tax credits, loans, and grants through the state. The second division is our Community Services Group, and this is the team that's focused on working with local governments throughout the state of Ohio. They also administer some large federal programs. This cold snap that we've had for forever, I guess, we manage a couple programs where we provide utility assistance to a lot of folks across the state. But then they also get involved with economic development projects with those local governments. And I can tell you just down the street here, a couple of the buildings on Liberty Street, we have some community development block grants involved there. Our third division is our Minority Business Division. Very similar services as our Business Services Division, but obviously tailored toward minority enterprises throughout the state of Ohio, which is very, very important to the governor. And then lastly, the Office of Tourism. Tourism generates about $36 billion in revenues for the state, so a very important industry. So we take the lead in marketing that industry, and then we're also working very, very closely with JobsOhio in terms of marketing for the state of Ohio. So that's a little bit about DSA.